Hey guys, Brian here from Thumper Fab. Today I'm going to walk you through our new Elite Nerf Rails for your U10 Pro XL. For the first step, you'll open up your doors and take a T30 Torx bit and remove the 4 screws. You'll have 2 in the front passenger section and 2 in the rear. We'll remove these before moving on to the next step. With our 4 OEM screws removed, we'll go ahead and rest our upper body to the Nerf rail in position. We'll take our M6 bolts provided in your hardware kit and thread them back into the factory holes we removed the OEM bolts from. We don't want to fully tighten these until we get everything bolted up, so we'll simply just snug them up and move on to the next step. With our front 2 bolts started, we can go ahead and move on to the rear and repeat the same process. We'll thread our M6 bolts provided in the hardware kit into the OEM holes, making sure not to tighten them up. When you're completing the installation of our Nerf rails on a U10 Pro that's a 3-seat model, you simply won't have the 2 interior cab mounting brackets. You'll have just the 2 bolts in your upper body before moving on to the next step. With our upper body to the Nerf rail loosely in position, the next step is preparing for the lower body to be mounted. There's a hole located back here in the rear of the frame section. This square tubing runs diagonal towards the motor. The hole that's closest to the outside of the vehicle, we're going to drill out up to a 3/8 drill bit so that we can use our rear mount fasteners. We're going to use a pilot bit to slowly step up the hole. Just a reminder, this is a factory provided hole, so you'll know exactly where to drill. And when you're drilling, you're going to drill out the hole in the tubing on the bottom side of the tubing and on the top, so we can stick a bolt all the way through and cap it off with a lock nut on the top side. We'll go ahead and step it up with our 3/8 drill bit. Once we get all the way through the pipe, we'll go on and move on to mounting our lower body for our Nerf rail. So with our upper body loosely mounted, we'll remove the OEM screws using our T30 Torx in preparation for mounting our lower body before we can go ahead and get everything tightened up. Here you can see the OEM fasteners that I pulled out of the bottom of the vehicle. We'll have one M6 fastener that we use our long M6 bolts that are provided in our hardware kit, the same ones that we use to mount our upper body. For the M8, we'll have M8 hardware to match, so that when you're bolting up the lower body, you'll know which bolt goes where. If you have any issues, you may need to try the M6 if you think it's an M8 hole. For the next step, we're going to go ahead and hold our lower body up into position while we start our outermost fasteners in the same holes that we just removed our OEM bolts. Once you have all your bolts installed down the lower portion of the lower body, we can move on to our top bolts. Just a reminder, just like the upper body of the Nerf rail, we're going to want to keep everything loose until we get all our bolts started and in position before we return and tighten everything up evenly. So here you can see the hardware that we're going to use to fasten the rearmost hole of the lower body of the Nerf rail to the frame. We'll slide this bolt up through it and through our spacer. This spacer will rest in between the top of the lower body and the frame section that we drilled out in the previous step. Once you have the bolt through the spacer, through the Nerf rail, and all the way through their frame tube, we'll cap it off with our flange nylon lock nut and begin moving on to our upper body bolts that fasten the upper and lower of the Nerf rail bodies together. So here you can see we have our long M8 button head going through the Nerf rail, through our spacer, which is located in between the top of the lower Nerf rail body and the bottom of this frame tube. This bolt's going through the hole we drilled out in the previous step. Once you get it all the way through this frame tube, up on the top side, we'll put our flange nylon lock nut before moving on to the next step. Here you can see the hardware that we'll use to fasten the upper body to the lower body of the Nerf rail. We'll simply slide it through the hole provided on our upper body before coming in with our flange lock nut on the underside. It'll help if you have an extension and a deep well socket. You'll simply just be able to slide it through the hole in the lower body of the Nerf rail. Once you get all these started, we can return and tighten all our hardware up before you're ready to hit the trails. With all your Nerf rail mounting and assembly bolts loosely fastened, we can return and tighten everything up evenly. Once you have all your bolts tight, you can move on to the other side and repeat the same process. Then you're ready to hit the trails and enjoy your new Elite Box Nerf Rails for a U10 Pro from Thumper Fab.